Smith, Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it!
We are here to Field Rockets News. It's the Rockets Field Podcast presented by the Believe Network and sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook. Of course, I am your host, LaShawn Binkley. You can always find me at Binkley Hoops on Twitter, X. You can also find on my written work of Rockets on their side. And I'm also a credentialed sports writer, coach covering your Houston Rockets and the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. And you can find me weekly on Fox 26 Houston. Of course, on there this morning. And that's why I'm up very early again this morning to talk about your Houston Rockets, who have come from the dead, almost thriller like if you went and saw the Michael Jackson movie. They've come from 3-0 down to make it a 3-2 series. Of course, many will say there should be a 3-2 series for the Rockets, but hey, that's water under the bridge at this point. You're just happy that the Rockets didn't get swept, and now you're even happier that the Rockets forced a game 6 to get it back to Houston. And I want to just kind of give my quick reaction. Of course, I have a lot more to talk about throughout this week. Into the game on Friday. Of course, I'll be out at the game Friday bringing you all the pre-post and everything in between with that game. But for now, we're going to be talking about the Rockets forcing a game 6 with a huge win. To me, the biggest win in Ime Udoka's regime since he's been with the Rockets was last night. The Rockets, like I said, were able to keep from getting eliminated in LA, force a game 6. And I want to give my 3 quick reasons why the Rockets were able to force that game 6. But just wanted to kind of give a overall summary of the last few games, because of course the last time we've talked, this was well before Game 3, and the Game 3 was probably one of the worst losses I have ever seen as a Houston sports fan, and I go all the way back to the '80s. Yeah, I've been watching Houston sports in general since that long. I don't really remember the U of H game when they lost to North Carolina State back in the day. I do remember the Houston Oilers losing that heartbreaking game against the Buffalo Bills, being up 35-3. I do remember the Houston Rockets losing those heartbreaking series to Seattle Supersonics before they won the championship. And I remember, of course, them losing that heartbreaking game against the Utah Jazz. That was one of the most gut punch type games I've ever seen. But just in terms of just overall having a game in your grasp and losing it, Game 3 was one of the top 3 worst losses I've ever seen in my life, and I got to saw it up close in person for being out at the game. But the Rockets have bounced back from that. You got to give all the credit to the young core, because, like I said, of course, everybody's been talking about Kevin Durant has only played 1 game in this series, so you got to give all the credit to the young core. I could tell right after they lost that Game 3. And you hear this a lot of times when teams are down in a series. They say, yeah, we believe we can win. We believe, and sometimes you don't believe it. But just listening to Alperen Sengun talk, listening to everybody, Jabari, Amin, talking about after the game, then during that practice where everybody made such a big deal about Jabari saying they were the better team. And of course, like, what else is he supposed to say? Of course, you're supposed to believe you're the better team. And then Alperen Sengun saying that we're younger. We believe that we'll be back here in Houston for Game 6. Everybody making a big deal about that. And the Rockets went out there and backed it up on the court. So you have to give, first and foremost, you have to give all the credit to the young core, because they have absolutely stepped up in these last 2 games, especially after that devastating, heartbreaking way they lost the other day. And then you got to give credit to Ime Udoka. I know a lot of people are not Ime Udoka fans, and that's fine. I have no problem, because up until, I would say, the second half of Game 3, he had been out coached by J.J. Redick. I mean, that's definitely fair to say. But these last 2 games, he has definitely found a way to get his team motivated, whether you want to believe he's part of it or not. But the coach, you got to give him credit. If you're going to criticize him, the coaching staff was bad the first 2 games. If you're going to criticize him, you got to give him credit on the other end. And they're definitely a big reason why the Rockets will be able to force this to a Game 6. So, like I said, back in Houston on Friday, 8:30, trying to force a Game 7. And force a Game 7, anything can happen at that point. But let's go ahead and get into the 3 reasons why the Rockets were able to win this Game 5 and force a Game 6. And you got to start with the defense. The Rockets, even though the Lakers hadn't put up any 120, 130-point playoff games, the Rockets' defense was not up to their standards in that first 2 games, especially going up against Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard. the Lakers were pretty much able to get whatever they wanted. That third game, they were definitely a lot better, and as we know, they should have won that game. But the first two games in LA, the Lakers got whatever they wanted on the offensive end. And the Rockets defense the last three games, especially last night, that's the type of Rockets defense that they played at good parts of this season while they were able to sustain the bad shooting they had throughout the year. And also definitely last season. They held the Lakers to a series low 93 points. Specifically, I want to talk about Reed Sheppard first because Reed Sheppard all year long has been criticized for his defense. I've criticized him for his defense. Everybody's criticized for his defense. Ime Udoka has put him on the bench a lot of times late in games because of his defense. So you've got to give credit where credit is due. The Lakers, like every other team all season long, decided they wanted to pick on Reed Sheppard. Anytime they could find a way to switch and get their offensive player against Reed Sheppard, they absolutely took it. Rui Hachimura is not a one-on-one player, but they felt like, okay, well, we have Reed Sheppard on him, so we're going to continue to give him the ball. And early on, Reed Sheppard took that to heart. Like, at some point, he's a professional player. He has pride. He knows that teams are picking on him, and he decided, you know what, enough is enough. He played great defense on Rui all game long, forced a couple of bad shots. One-on-one, not with any help, one-on-one, forced him into some bad shots. LeBron tried to pick on him. He played great defense against him. They tried to switch. They weren't able to get those switches as much with DeAndre Ayton as they did the game before. Ayton got a lot of his points just off offensive rebound. But they tried whatever they can to get Reed Sheppard in every single action on the offensive end the Lakers were with their possessions, and they just could not take advantage of it. Reed Sheppard he played his best defensive game of his career. And of course, we know about the huge steal at the end of the game where it looked like, oh, here we go. Lakers went on an 11-1 run. They cut the lead down to 5, or cut the lead down to 3, and now it seemed like, okay, here we go. This series, the Rockets are in trouble. Made that huge mid-range jumper, and then came down, stripped the ball from LeBron, which is hard enough as it is. You know, we know how strong LeBron is, but not only strip from him and not foul, and gets a live ball turnover and an easy dunk that completely turned around the game. Those were the two biggest plays of the entire game, and both were by Reed Sheppard. So got to start by giving Reed Sheppard his credit on the defensive end because he had his best defensive game of his entire career. Then, of course, this entire team was great on defensive end, but also Amen Thompson and the defense he's played on Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard in the first two games had 20-plus points in both game 1 and game 2. And last few games, especially last night game, Amen Thompson has had him in basketball hell the last couple of games. Luke Kennard scored 1 point last night. He hasn't made a 3 in 2 consecutive games, and Amen Thompson has been the primary defender on Luke Kennard the entire series. Of course, sometimes they force switches, and other guys have done a great job of not giving him any air space. Luke Kennard cannot put the ball on the ground to try to get around anybody. He has to get his points by trying to find some type of opening off the screen. So the Rockets as a whole did a great job on him switching back and forth whenever he tries to get any type of opening. They completely have shut him down his last two games. Amen Thompson has been the main reason why. Anytime Luke Kennard gets the basketball, Amen Thompson is right there. He's trailing. He's forced him into bad shots. He has done a great job on Luke Kennard. Also, you have to give it up to Jabari Smith, who's going to be talked about a lot here because he's one of the big reasons why the Rockets won this game. His defense on Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart, again, great first couple of games. He has struggled since then. He started off hot last night, 8 points, I think, in the first quarter. And after that, he only scored 3 points the rest of the game. Jabari Smith shut him down the previous game. Jabari Smith is playing like his best overall basketball of his career because he's doing it on both ends of the court. And it's not just as a weak side shot blocker, which is usually how he affects the team on the defensive end. He's doing it as a point of attack person. He's the guy guarding their point guard, even though Marcus Smart is not a traditional point guard, but he still is out there on the perimeter guarding Marcus Smart and forcing him into some bad shots, into some turnovers. Jabari Smith did a great job on Marcus Smart these last couple of games, and also Tari Eason defense on LeBron James. Even though LeBron James kind of picked up at the end of the game, LeBron James is really starting to seem like he's starting to slow down. He's starting to get tired. It seems like he's trying to save his energy for the fourth quarter, and he's still 41 years old. As great as LeBron James is, that hasn't been enough the last two games, and Tari Eason is a big reason why. He's been all over LeBron. LeBron's not able to post him up like he was doing Josh Okogie in the first couple of games. So LeBron is having to do a lot of his work from the outside. LeBron hasn't made a three in the last two games. He's only 11 for 29 in the last two games. And he has 10 turnovers. So the Rockets defense as a whole has been great on him. And also Alperen Sengun, because they did a lot of switching trying to get Sengun onto LeBron this entire series. And he was able to take advantage of the first couple of games. But now since those first two games, he's been able to take advantage of that switch. So Alperen Sengun's did a great job on his switches as well. But Tyrese has been the main defender on LeBron. He's done an absolutely great job. But just like I said, overall, the Rockets defense has been a lot better. They have actually been a better three-point shooting team in the last two games because they play such great defense and not giving up those open shots. Austin Reeves came back, and some told me that Austin Reeves coming back was not going to make a huge difference in this game just because he hasn't played in a month. I don't care how great you are. You haven't played professional basketball in a month, and you're trying to come back in a playoff game. Started off great, but then you start to see he started to slow down because his conditioning is not there. He finished the game 4 for 16. So you combine that with Luke Kennard. The Rockets did a great job on the two guys who play the same basis, the same position. And Ime said before the game that they're not really going to switch anything as far as the defense says with Austin Reeves back because they run similar plays for him and Luke Kennard, even though they're two different players because Austin Reeves is definitely a better player putting the ball down and being able to get to the basket. But either way, they play great defense on both of those guys. So defense was definitely a big reason why the Rockets were able to win this game. Also, have to talk about the bench. We have harped on the bench. I have harped on the bench all season long about how it wasn't giving production. We saw in that game 3, if I'm not mistaken, where they only scored 5 points. I'm sorry, I gave them too much credit. They only scored 3 points in the entire game. And that was like one of the worst bench productions I've seen of any team since I've been watching basketball, playoff basketball. Look, Bronny James outscored him by himself, and he only played around 7 or 8, a handful of minutes in that game, 5 to 3. So that tell you how bad the bench was to the point where every starter played 40-plus minutes. Of course, it did go in overtime, but I don't think that really would have mattered because they would have played 40-plus minutes anyway, even if you finished a regulation. So you have to get up to the bench. The bench scored 18 points in this game. Dorian Finney-Smith had his best game in a long time, absolutely his best playoff game. This was his most impactful game he's had as a Houston Rockets. He finished with 6 points, 2 huge threes, played great defense on LeBron as well when he came into the game. Was 2 for 5 from 3, real quick on the three-pointers. Him and Amen Thompson were combined 4 for 10 from three-point range. If I came into this before the game and told you you're going to get 4 three-pointers from Amen Thompson and Dorian Finney-Smith, you probably would have said, what's wrong with me? You probably would have told me to go get a checkup because there's no way that would have been possible considering that Dorian Finney-Smith hadn't made multiple threes since mid-March. And Amen Thompson, we know Amen Thompson struggled from three-point range. But those two guys hit 4 threes. The Lakers as a team only made 7. So that was a huge impact. But back to the bench. Also, Aaron Holiday came in. He scored 5 points. You had Josh Okogie, who was absolutely great the entire game. He brought energy. The Rockets trailed early by double digits, and he came in and brought energy. Great defense overall. The Rockets only went 3 players deep on the bench. So the fact that they were able to get 18 points, we're only going with 3 players, got to give credit to the bench. Like I said, we've talked about them all season long, how they weren't being productive, how they were a horrible bench. We got to give them credit. They came out and they were another reason why the Rockets were able to win this game and force a game 6. And my final reason why the Rockets were able to win this game is kind of a twofer. You got to talk about Alperen Sengun and Jabari Smith. Let's start with Jabari Smith. He said before the game, I was right there at practice. I knew as soon as he said it, they were going to go, the national media was going to run with it, and that's exactly what they did. He said the Rockets were the better team. And then Michael Shapiro, one of my cohorts as far as journalists, he asked him again, he said, so why do you feel like y'all the better team? And he said, because from top to bottom, I think we're the better team. It may be my opinion, I may be biased, but I just think we are the better team. And he went out there, and a lot of times players will say stuff and they don't back it up on the court. Jabari Smith backed it up on the court. He had a team high 22 points. And not only his points, but his defense as well. He had 2 huge blocks. I talked about already with him guarding Marcus Smart. He had his most impactful game as a pro. I know he's had higher scoring games in the regular season, but this is the playoffs. It's a totally different animal when it comes to impact that you can have on a game. This was his most impactful game. He was definitely a huge reason why the Rockets are going back to Houston for Game 6. And of course, before I wrap it up, I got to talk about Alperen Sengun. The Lakers have tried to double team the Rockets' best players all series long. We saw it the one game Kevin Durant played. We've seen it in the regular season game the Rockets had against the Lakers where they would double trap, get the ball out of Kevin Durant's hands. Of course, we've seen it with Kevin Durant out. They tried to do this with Alperen Sengun. And this is not a knock against Kevin Durant, so don't try to turn this into anything other than Alperen Sengun. This is not earth-shattering, groundbreaking news here. Alperen Sengun is a better passer than Kevin Durant. So when they try to double team Alperen Sengun, he is able to get the ball out and he's able to put players in positions to where they can score. Also, the Rockets are making shots because a lot of the Kevin Durant passes that should have been assists in the games against the Lakers, the Rockets weren't making shots. So you can't put all of that on Kevin Durant. But Alperen Sengun, we know this since he came into the league, he is a great playmaker. When guys are moving, when guys are making shots, he can pick apart the Lakers. He had 8 assists last night. He completely controlled the game for the Rockets. He was the Rockets point guard last night, not point center. He was the Rockets point guard last night, and he completely controlled the game. He got the Rockets into the right spots. He was able to find guys when they double teamed them. It didn't matter if he was at the top of the key, whether he was on the baseline. He was finding guys cutting to the basket. Like I said, he controlled the game throughout. You don't even care about the 5 turnovers because the Lakers putting so much pressure on him throughout the game that you expect a player to have that many turnovers when he's having the ball in his hand the entire basketball game. But he didn't let any of the turnovers affect him. And then he still was able to score 14 points because that's with the Lakers. He had the less shots of anybody in the starting 5, and he still was able to score 14 points, had 9 rebounds, had 8 assists, 2 steals, a block, a +8, which was the best on the entire team. Alperen Sengun overall game is another reason why the Rockets were able to pull out this game. And now we're coming back to Houston for the Game 6. Like I said, I'll be out at that game bringing you everything about Game 6. And now, if I know no team in NBA history has ever come back from 0-3. Only, if I'm not mistaken, 6 teams have forced a Game 7. Only 16 have forced a Game 6. The Rockets are now the 16th team. It's good to be on the right side of some history for once, instead of on the wrong side of history on a lot of the games the Rockets have played this season. So now I fully expect the Rockets to win Game 6. You get to Game 7, anything can happen at that point. And if we get to Game 7, I'll give my opinion on that after that. But right now, I give the Rockets 50-50 chance to win a Game 7. So compared to where they were just a few days ago, where they were pretty much left for dead by everybody, the fact that the Rockets even playing a Game 6 is huge. When you were just happy if the Rockets didn't get swept at home. And you get to Game 7, like I said, anything can happen. You have all the momentum. We'll see about if Kevin Durant will come back for Game 7. I don't think he's going to play in Game 6. I'll be surprised if he plays in Game 6. But the Rockets have all the momentum. You keep it going. You got to take care of business first, of course, with Game 6 to force that Game 7. But right now, as a Rockets fan, you have to be happy because I know they should be up 3-2. That makes that Game 3 even worse. The Rockets should be trying to close this out on Friday. But, hey, you got to take what you can get at this point. And the Rockets right now can force a Game 7 and be the 7th team all time to force a Game 7. So we'll see what they do on Friday. Again, I appreciate our support as usual. We're well over 7,000 subscribers right now. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel because I try to bring you everything besides just podcasts, pre and post game. As you've seen the last couple of weeks, a lot of practice footage, a lot of practice interviews. There's only a handful of us that actually go to these practices, so I try to bring you a little bit of everything. If y'all subscribe, I appreciate the support all season long. The last few years, I definitely appreciate it. So definitely make sure you check out, come back. I will be doing another show this weekend. And as usual, I appreciate the support. And make sure you check out the next episode of Rocket Fuel Podcast.